Hello and welcome to Don't Sleep on It for September, a series in which I try and add a bit of positivity to the channel by going over some things that perhaps didn't get the viewership they deserve. Season 4 of Taskmaster has just wrapped up, but CG, you're from the UK and Taskmaster's on like Season 11. Yes, but I'm talking about Taskmaster New Zealand. Many countries have now picked up the formula of Taskmaster, in which a panel of comedians, TV hosts and actors perform tasks for their Taskmaster, and as you would expect, the US completely missed the point and fluffed it up, and other countries are either too identical or too culturally different for my sensibilities. But New Zealand is a standout. It's different enough that it has its own character, it's also similar enough that it's familiar and comfortable.
I had an idea.
Okay.
About how to make this cake really inappropriate.
Okay.
Have you seen American Pie? How would you feel if we turned all the cameras off and you American Pied the cake?
I don't know what that means. I think I can guess. And I'm not that keen.
On.
I didn't move. I stood here the whole time.
Paul. I think I know an American pieing when I see one.
You got a thick dick, Paul?
Paul, the Taskmaster's assistant, has a hilarious approach, in many ways an opposite to Little Alex Horn, more wry and sarcastic and with an introverted energy and more involved, I would say. The Taskmaster is also tonally very unique compared to Greg, and his judging is very different as well. Culturally, the comedians, they're not too different, but it is slightly different from UK comedy. It is still hilarious. In some instances, the New Zealand Taskmaster has actually introduced new concepts and new tasks that have then been picked up by the UK show. So I think even the UK show has a lot of respect for the New Zealand Taskmaster. So yeah, don't sleep on Taskmaster New Zealand.
The new season of Taskmaster NZ.
Apple TV's Foundation Season 2 wrapped up in September. If you're unfamiliar, Foundation is a space-based Game of Thrones, based on Isaac Asimov's stories, yes, the Asimov who created the 3 Rules of Robotics. I mulled over whether to include this in Don't Sleep, as we've been burned by huge shows ending awfully before. And so far, this is following the same trajectory of Game of Thrones. Season 1 was muddled, relatively average. Season 2 was a vast improvement, allowing characters to shine and introducing more of the world, or in Foundation's case, more of the universe. The big advantage is that, unlike Game of Thrones, the stories for this are already written. Though I will admit, I haven't the foggiest idea how close this is to the stories, as I've never read them. To get to Season 2, you will have to watch Season 1. I don't think you have a hope of figuring things out otherwise. It's not something you can watch whilst idly scrolling through whatever people scroll through now that Elon has nuked Twitter, as the story is very complex. It spans multiple timelines, actors play different versions of themselves in different timelines. Though I have compared it to Game of Thrones a lot, its complexity is worlds apart from Game of Thrones. Relatively simple story in comparison, but ultimately I've added it to Don't Sleep because I've been champing at the bit for a big sci-fi thing that isn't set in the Star Wars universe, and though Season 1 was meh, Season 2 is a satisfying follow-up, expanding on already known elements, and it really dove into the machinations and motivations of the villains more. There are some great actors in this, and they get much more of a chance to chew the scenery in Season 2, but it's also full of visual spectacle. No expense has been spared.
Spared no expense.
Aside from a thread about psychics that I could perhaps have done with a little bit less of, Season 2 was a really, really good watch, and I'm crossing my fingers that the momentum is carried into Season 3. Don't sleep on Foundation.
We fight for peace. not because we fear we will lose, but because we know that if there is war, we will win.
We are taking the planet!
It's time you and I had a reckoning.
Past Lives is the directorial debut from Celine Song, and it's likely to be my favourite movie of the year. I've already made a short review about it, as I do with all the movies I watch, but to go into more detail than a minute allows, the movie is the story of two childhood sweethearts who are separated due to one of the families emigrating. 24 years later, when one is married and the other never really found his place in life, the internet allows them to reconnect. On the face of it, sounds pretty simple. And if it was made by most other people, particularly those who make schlocky romantic movies, it would play out extremely differently. There are a number of things that make this movie really work and feel believable. It's very smartly written. There's an absolutely essential second act, which cements why the third act feels the way it does, and why it should feel that way. I've moved around a lot myself, and for the life of me, I can't remember anyone I knew when I was 10, and I was more interested in Nintendo than meaningful relationships at that age. So had the movie just jumped to 24 years later, it would have lost all credibility for me. When it does move to the third act, the writing doesn't dumb down and create a who is she gonna go with style scenario. It's grounded, incredibly realistic. We're not watching two guys fighting for the love of a woman. We're watching three adults making the best of a really awkward, complicated scenario. That realism is carried by the performances, all-round terrific performances. So much is said with just the way the characters look at each other or their body language around each other. In an interview, Celine Song said that when the two male leads actually meet on screen for the first time, that is actually the first time those two actors met as well. They didn't rehearse together. It's a bold choice for any director, let alone a debuting director. And doing that creates an atmosphere that I think would be difficult to recreate had they have met and rehearsed. She uses silence and space throughout for both comfort and discomfort expertly. There are a few movies I can think of that manage to capture both an awkward silence and an uncomfortable silence without interjecting music. This movie is a smart, subtle, nuanced, brilliant movie. So don't sleep on Past Lives.
If two strangers walk by each other in the street and their clothes accidentally brush, that means there have been 8,000 layers of inyan between them.
Want you to stay. Want you to stay.
So that's it for September's Don't Sleep On It. Let me know in the comments if there's anything that you feel didn't get the viewership it deserves that perhaps I should watch, and if I find time, I'll check it out. Thanks for watching, and all of that nonsense, subscribey, likey stuff.